Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, your cheat sheet for the best performing CTV strategies. Thank you so much for taking time out of your doubtless busy schedule to tune in. And before we dive into the presentation, we have a couple housekeeping items to go over. First, please type any questions that you have in the Q&A tab that you'll see to your right. And second, if you have any technical concerns, anything that's going awry, just please put any of those issues in the chat tab and someone from our production team will be sure to address them. It's now my pleasure to introduce our presenter. Allie Lindly is a Senior Customer Success Manager at MNTN. After starting in the ad tech space in sales, she grew to love building relationships and working with clients over the long term to help them achieve both their CTV and more generally their business goals. Collaborating and iterating are her favorite parts of work, and her favorite part of not working is playing outside with her husband and son. Allie, take it away.
Thanks, Hannah. Hi, here I am. Good to meet you all. Great to be presenting today. I'm really excited about this deck. When we talked through what we wanted to share, it became very clear that it was a lot of things that I say almost every day, kind of best practices for running your CTV campaign. So today's key takeaway will really be all about how we can make the most of CTV for your results using tried and true strategies from top advertisers at MNTN. It's really just about not reinventing the wheel. Briefly, today's agenda. We'll be going over 4 things. It'll really be about what do top advertisers know about CTV, and then how to best launch, then maintain, and then optimize your campaign. I thought of it a little bit like a gardening metaphor, which I apologize, but indulge me. You think about starting a garden and it seems like a good idea. Then maybe you buy seeds and you plant them. It's kind of your launch. You see them sprout up. It takes longer than you think it will, but they sprout. And it's really just about getting them going, trying to get them to grow healthy and strong. And eventually you start fertilizing and trying to actually get the fruit, optimizing your campaign for success. So I might have a few other gardening metaphors sprinkled throughout. I apologize, but I thought it might make it, kind of fun. And really before we start, I think something that's easy to do is just fear the new. In the world of digital advertising right now, there's so much that's constantly changing. It's overwhelming to take on another platform. There's changes to rules and privacy policies. There's changes to measurement and protocols. And in the same way, thinking about adding another channel is just sometimes a lot for people. And to think, how am I even going to know how to spend enough time to optimize? But really, the hard work has been done before you. There are many advertisers using CTV and finding success. And rather than reinventing the wheel, we can borrow from their playbook, or it's kind of like having a gardener. You have someone that already knows the way. So I'm excited to talk these through with you and really to understand where the credibility comes from. I'll share kind of where this data started. So MNTN took our top 25% of our advertisers and just tried to collate the data on what are they doing that's actually why are they doing so well? What's working for them? How have they set up their strategy for success? And then what are they doing after they set up to keep going? So I've been a customer success manager for about 2 years now. And so some of my clients I've been with for that entire time and had the joy of kind of optimizing with them, testing new things, figuring things out. And so we took those excellent, best performing advertisers, took all their data, and we made what we call the path to greatness. So it's really just kind of a pre-paved road instead of someone out there bushwhacking. So to get into this, we made what we call our cheat sheet. It sounds kind of negative. I have 5 cheats. So I'll take you through them 1 through 5. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat. We will do them all after, but feel free to kind of put them in real time and as you think of them. The first one, cheat number 1, pro tip, a little less sad. Pro tip number 1, good things take time. So of course, the path to success up and to the right is exactly what you want. But sometimes it takes longer than you might expect it will, kind of like planting a seed and staring at the dirt, waiting for it to come up. The first days of your campaign will often feel like staring at the dirt, waiting for results. And what we say is it takes 30 days to really be up and running. You might see sprouts at 30 days, but 75 to 90 days to really start to see the full fruit of your investment in CTV. So this allows time for delivery and optimization. If you think of TV as the most influential screen in the house, you think when people are, watching HGTV late at night, they're not also usually buying stuff, but they're being influenced, and you have their dedicated eyeballs watching, and you're starting to influence their behavior. So it really does take a little bit for CTV to have an impact. And then if you think about kind of over the longer term, one of my best customers, I've had them since I started as a CSM. They're a large furniture brand. It's not something that people decide overnight, like, hey, let's buy all new furniture for, whether it be commercial, let's buy all new desks for this school, or at home, I'm going to buy a new couch. Some of you are impulse buyers, but most of us are not. So it really depends on your product, but it takes a little bit longer than some people think. Cheat number 2 is about launching campaigns together. So something I see often with brands is that they want to just dip their toe in the water. So they think, okay, I'm going to start with a prospecting campaign, and then I'm going to layer in retargeting if I want more results, or if I want better ROAS, or basically that. So they often start a little bit slow. However, if you're new to CTV, our research has shown that the best way to set yourself up for success is to launch both at the same time, kind of to jump into the deep end. Launching both makes a faster scale up. And you see the numbers are 27% more site traffic and double ROAS during the first 90 days than if you launched with just prospecting. So wait and see ends up lessening returns. And those who start retargeting halfway through see only a 17% increase in site traffic and only 52% more ROAS than if you'd started both right at the onset. So while the right CTV platform will include auto optimizations to help you reach your KPIs regardless of your setup, the top 25% of advertisers know that there's additional things they can do to make the most of their campaigns. So it's really about kind of committing, as scary as it may seem, and then watching and seeing, and then we optimize from there. So we'll get into some of the optimizations we like to make further down. But the next one is cheat number 3. Let's see it. Consistency is key. So I mentioned that one of my best clients I've had since I started, we've been running CTV campaigns, and it's one of their best performing channels. They've been live on Mountain for many, many years, and on CTV since 2020 or 2021, one of those two. So for many years, but really this sustained growth is, and it's driving sustained growth for their business. So this comes from a consistent and opportunistic approach. So they not only run seasonal campaigns, leaving prospecting and retargeting kind of always, or they not only run evergreen campaigns, leaving prospecting and retargeting always live. They also run seasonal campaigns during their most significant seasons. For them, it's obviously Q4 and then their furniture. So they use, they're heavy up around Memorial Day and Labor Day as well. So taking that approach and like focusing not only on kind of a baseline set of campaigns that's always live, but also on specific pushes during their key moments allows them to kind of maximize revenue. Yeah, and so another example of a brand that does this, that does an amazing job, is this kitchen appliance brand I have. They see incredible ROAS during Q4 in particular. It's an amazing gift. And then it's great for Father's Day, you know, what to buy dad. And so, however, they don't just turn off, you know, on January 1. What they do is they stay on throughout the year at kind of a steady state. And then we scale up for holidays, Memorial Day, Father's Day, etc., Q4. And what we do during those kind of off periods for them where their business isn't necessarily growing a lot is we shift our mindset on the goal as well. So during Q4, we are looking hard at ROAS and trying to see revenue and how we can maximize that. But come January 1, that might not be exactly the priority for the business when they're like, okay, now nobody's thinking about this appliance anymore. What do we do? So we shift toward a visit rate and cost per visit. And so we start to shift our creative toward trying to drive people to the site and trying to create awareness and trying to, have measurable impact on their brand versus measuring the impact on their revenue. So it's really a matter of staying live year round and then fluctuating your creative and your goal, and like understanding what success looks like at different times to make the most of it. Related to staying live year round is the question of what to do with your creative. So cheat number 4 is keeping your creative fresh. This is tricky because I'm like, telling you to stay live year round, but CTV creative cannot be the same year round. And people say like, well, I have a small team. I don't have the resources to do that. And so there's some strategies to kind of work around that, but essentially there's small changes that you can make to keep your evergreen creative kind of looking fresh and continuing to kind of catch eyes throughout the year. And that's absolutely the best practice. Regularly refreshed creative avoids ad fatigue or ad blindness. And that's what really leads to diminishing results. So sometimes it'll be early May and people will be like, what's happening to performance? I'm like, well, we've been running the same ad since January. And seasonality aside, like people aren't seeing it as well as they used to. Let's kind of adjust your audience, but let's really like take a look at your creative and see what we can do to keep it fresh. So really around that 3-month mark is right where I'm like, okay, we definitely need to change something. Around the 2-month mark is when people start to fall off on seeing it. So that same brand I said, the kitchen appliance brand that was doing great, and our kind of campaign strategy is locked in throughout the year. When they first started CTV and before we'd been working together for a long time, they started around Thanksgiving, a great time for a kitchen appliance brand, sure. But come Easter, we were running that same Thanksgiving focused creative. And they were just like, we're kind of strapped. We don't this is what it is. And I was like, what can we do to get this fresh? And when we refreshed that ad and put in something more seasonal and just a little bit more catchy, we saw a huge improvement in their performance. So it really does make an impact. It's kind of an easy lever to forget once you get your TV ad made and you're like, we're live on CTV. But it really is a matter of kind of figuring out how you can work into your kind of typical workflow, keeping that updated, even if it's a change to end card or changing the shot order and refreshing the look or the music. Yeah. And then lastly, we have cheat number 5. Seasonal doesn't have to be new. So that same brand that was running their Thanksgiving ad in, early April. They were like, well, how do we do this? How do we keep it fresh? I don't have capacity. I don't have the budget to make a brand new ad. And so what we talk through is how small creative variations can really go a long way. So on a CTV ad, that might just be swapping out your end cards or, highlighting a specific seasonal promotion or changing out the music and maybe redoing some small feature of the ad. Those things aren't costly and they're usually quite easy to do. And what that does is just kind of catches people's eyes afresh. In the same way, you can do that pretty simply with your multi-touch kind of visual creative. And people find that pretty easy to keep fresh. So instead of just updating your CTV creative, maybe you don't have the capacity to do that every 2 to 3 months, but we can, at the very least, keep your multi-touch creative refreshed. So that's rotating out the background photo, changing out, putting some of your video from your CTV ad into your multi-touch ad. What else can you do to it? Highlight a new promo, change the call to action on that. Those small things have a larger impact than you'd really think. And then especially around seasonal times, if you have the capacity to change it just for Memorial Day, just for Labor Day, just for the 4th of July, those changes drive kind of an outsized impact. The last cheat is actually a little bit of extra credit, which I liked. And this was about considering specific creative for retargeting. So on CTV, you can run, of course, prospecting campaigns using, a myriad of first-party audiences or third-party audiences. And then you can run retargeting ad campaigns using your own audiences. And using those audiences and then deciding to make tailor-made creative just for those first-party audiences is a strategy that we see lead to really great retargeting results. So only a handful of the top advertisers took this approach, but what it did was drive kind of significant impact for their performance. And that's using product-focused ads to drive urgency, using those call to actions in both the TV and the multi-touch ad, and mentioning seasonal offerings. So retargeting creative has an average shelf life of 176 days. What's that? About 5.5 months. But it's just a way of leveling up even further. And it's usually something that's pretty attainable for people. So this kind of ties into seasonal not being new, as seasonal not being difficult, and hopefully being like a really attainable way for you guys to take what you have and make it as impactful as possible for connected TV. Kind of on a final note or a separate note, talking about how much we're targeting creative to create. Some brands are like, well, I just have this one video and this one multi-touch ad. And that's great. You have to start where you have to start. But sometimes what we have seen is that adding multiple creatives in and allowing yourself to test multiple variations of similar ads is driving stronger results. So brands with 3 or more creatives ended up seeing higher ROAS than people running only one creative and a lower cost per visit. And I think it's simply just a matter of keeping things fresh. You're always rotating, you're always updating, and having those variations are really impactful. Yeah, I was going to tell you a story of a brand that does a really great job of that, but I'll save that in for the Q&A if we get something in that realm. And then wanted to kind of just reiterate our key takeaways from today. So 3 main things: the success of the people that have already done it and have solidified best practices for newcomers are the people whose path you can follow in. The second one is success on CTV takes time. Like planting a seed, you stare at the dirt for a little bit of time, and then you start to see those sprouts, and it eventually becomes really fruitful. It's just the process of auto optimization. So the system is always learning, and the more data it can gather, the better results it can deliver. It's a matter of patience while hopefully seeing some results throughout the whole time. And then finally, advertisers should plan to run evergreen campaigns with seasonal heavy ups. So this emphasis on seasonality and having enough creative for regular refreshes can really be impactful for people. I think that covers kind of the majority of the content that I wanted to share with you guys. I think I've skimmed the surface of best practices on best strategies and how to drive the most results for your brand. Hopefully that is useful for you all. And then I want to open it up to Q&A and hear any questions that you have, something that this might have kind of sparked a new thought for you all.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing these pro tips and these concrete examples, Allie, which I feel like always help drive the point home. As a quick note to all attendees and CTV campaign gardeners, Mountain has provided several handouts, and you can just find them under the handouts tab to the right of your screen. And yes, we now have time for a few questions. So first, what is one piece of advice, Allie, that you always give your clients running prospecting campaigns on CTV?
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be, if I think about that, it's 2 pieces of advice. The first one will be give it time. Some people will launch their prospecting campaign on a Friday, and then on Monday they'll be like, what is going on? And so I think part of my job really is just helping them take a breath and realize that it will take a minute. And then the second one would be as much as possible to run retargeting alongside of it and let kind of the breadth of CTV, kind of the full funnel, drive impact for you. So take some time and run retargeting alongside if you can.
All right, it looks like the second question is, would you still recommend
I have a second thought on that.
Oh,
So
sure.
And I was like looking back at my notes. The other thing that I think about when I'm running a prospecting campaign, sorry, my brain's not on, it's early, neither is your guys's. But the other thing I think about when I'm running a prospecting only campaign is the impact of your full funnel. So when I have brands that launch just prospecting, and then 3 days later, they're like, what's going on? I'm like, give it a second. But then maybe 3 weeks later, we're seeing results and we're like, okay, we're profitable, but barely. I like to remind people about the way that Mountain's attribution model works is rather conservative. And then when you combine that with other lower funnel efforts, you might not see CTV and especially prospecting getting the attribution and performance, meeting the performance goals you were hoping. And it's really just a matter of measurement. So a lot of times, maybe you'll be running CTV at the top of your funnel and hoping to see the performance from that in the Mountain dashboard, and you absolutely should. But if you're running a ton of display with another partner or a ton of social retargeting with someone else, then you won't end up seeing the attribution falling towards your TV campaign. But what we'd hope for is that you'd see kind of a cumulative lift, the halo effect of having that other channel running and kind of letting all ships rise. Okay, sorry. Thank you. That was the rest of that thought, and it just was like not coming.
Absolutely. It looks like we have several questions coming in about using QR codes in CTV creative. So whether you have any data about that, has it been successful, and how do you increase the number of people scanning those QR codes?
Yeah. So I think it was a couple Super Bowls ago now, there was like the shot heard around the world, a CTV ad with a TV ad with just a QR code and like literally nothing. And I've been getting this question since then. Candidly, I've not seen it perform very well in a variety. I've had maybe 10 advertisers since run that. Those would be 10 people that didn't listen to my recommendation. For the most part, people might be watching TV with a secondary device, holding their phone like an appendage. But picking up your phone from between the couch cushions and then scanning in the limited time that they have is not like a common user behavior. People are more likely to just kind of watch the ad. So we don't see incredible performance. It doesn't drive a significant lift. It's definitely something you're welcome to test. And I'm always curious to see maybe this brand will be the one. But it's not a huge kind of performance driver for CTV.
This person asks, if you have a small team, do you have any advice on making enough creative to rotate through, especially throughout the year?
Absolutely. So I touched on this a little bit about kind of the benefit of recycling as much as you can and making small changes. So repurposing maybe what you have for social, or repurposing your CTV ad and cutting in a new end card, things like that. Trying new call to actions, trying new voiceovers, maybe new music, small things like that really do make your ad feel fresh. And then the other answer, if you're running on Mountain, really is our creative as a service subscription. So that's brands who are already live and spending at kind of a baseline amount. Mountain at no additional cost will create kind of a revolving door of new ad creative for you based on what you'd already planned to spend. And then the third option there is QuickFrame, of course, our brand that has a creative marketplace that creates, kind of connects brands with content creators to make really kind of lower cost, efficient, but also beautiful CTV creative. So your options are kind of get scrappy with what you have, lean into Mountain and the services we already provide, or lean into QuickFrame and get a really cost efficient and beautiful fresh ad for probably a lot less than you would spend with a traditional agency approach.
This question is about how often do you all update, add, or remove audience segments from your database?
From our database. Okay, I was like, from our campaigns or our database? Great. So our database leverages audiences from Oracle and their third-party audiences that they provide. So it's really a matter of the data that they are kind of always cycling through. And it's everything from credit card data to browsing data, things like that. And it's up to them to constantly be updating it. I don't have numbers on how frequently it's being updated, but I see it evolve a lot because the audience size in my campaigns is always changing. Audience segments within my campaigns are kind of being deprecated. So I do know that data is constantly being refreshed. Thanks.
And what would you tell a client if they were indecisive on running CTV programmatically versus publisher direct? Are there benefits or drawbacks of each that you'd highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. When I think about the benefits of programmatic, I think it reminds me of the creative question where you're like, hey, I don't have bandwidth, I have a small team. When you're running programmatic, it kind of relieves you of the burden of constantly trying to optimize And ultimately, it does typically a better job of optimizing toward the audiences, the channels that are better performing, the devices that are better performing, serving at a time of day that is more impactful for your brand. So there's so many levers to pull in the connected TV realm, and to kind of eliminate all of that kind of multitude of factors to consider and really just leave yourself thinking about audience, creative, and budget and goal. That's kind of the benefit of programmatic and Mountain, is that you don't have to think about so many small things like that. Not to mention the cost efficiency of, like, someone who buys CTV in bulk versus individual brands working directly with publishers. So, yeah.
It looks like there's a couple questions that have to do with retargeting. So can you retarget website visitors with CTV? And also, can you retarget with email when a CTV campaign is still running?
Yes and yes. Typical, like traditional retargeting is possible through Mountain. You can we place a pixel on your site to even launch. And so you can retarget based on user behavior on your site. 1+ page view, 2+ page view, time on site, types of pages viewed. And that allows you to run a really tailored CTV retargeting campaign. And then you can also run what we call a CRM campaign. So you can upload a list of emails into Mountain, and we will kind of match those back to households and then be able to run against those as well. So those are kind of separate campaign types as of now, but they're both feasible within Mountain.
And you touched upon evergreen campaigns. What if your product has key seasons or holidays? Would you still recommend that approach?
Absolutely. So I kind of gave that example of a brand who stays live year round and then really kind of leans in around 4th of July, like all these key holidays for their brand. And that's the best approach there. It keeps you from kind of needing to re-ramp and relearn, and also allows you to drive toward other business goals when it's not necessarily like prime time Q4, to still kind of be driving people to your brand, introducing people to your brand, and driving like measurable results, even if it's not a key moment for revenue for your business.
It looks like that's all the time we have for questions, but Allie, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I appreciate everyone's time. I'm happy to kind of talk through all of these things. The content feels so similar to what I talk through on a daily basis with all of my live customers. So I enjoy talking through these strategies and hope it was helpful for you all.
Wonderful. Well, for all the attendees, thank you so much for joining us. We will send out an on-demand recording of the webinar to everyone this afternoon. So until next time, and thank you so much, Allie.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.